Okay, we're moving on. We're now talking about the next short time period in Texas history, the Republic of Texas. Okay? 1836 to 1845. 1836 to 1845. Short period of time. Okay, so let's imagine this. The Texan army had just defeated the Mexican army at San Jacinto. They had captured the leader of Mexico, okay, and they had forced him. Now historians debate if they should have done that or not. It's not going to be on your test, but they forced him to sign the Treaty of Velasco, to make Texas independent. Okay. Well, now what do you do? We're still talking about a fairly small area of Texas. We're not talking about way up here really, just kind of this area right in here. All right? At least that's where most of the people are. And again, about 30,000, and white people really, coming in from this part, from the U.S. versus 7,800 people from Mexico. Okay, and so what do? They have to create a government, right? Well, because of the influence from the U.S., it makes sense that they would create or try to create a government based on the system in the U.S., right? They had a constitution. Texas has a constitution. They had a president. They had a Congress, okay, and so forth, right? Now, this is an aside, sorry, but it's an important one. You might see a question, you don't know if you will, but you might, about, they will ask you about what right is included under the Texas Constitution, the Bill of Rights. Okay, what right is included? You might see a question about that. If you do, the question is probably equal protection under the law, right? Equal protection under the law. Okay, so just something to remember. The Texas Constitution does not guarantee a universal right to vote, at least at the time. It did not have the right to maintain militias. It didn't have the right to conduct international commerce. Now, the Constitution has changed a lot since then in terms of amendments. There's been a lot of them. I'd have to go look up how many there are. You don't need to know that, but there's been a lot of amendments to the Texas Constitution. But if there's a question about what right is included under the Texas Constitution Bill of Rights, the answer is probably equal protection under the law. Okay, just something to keep in mind. Now, Republic of Texas had a lot of problems in the beginning. Okay, a lot of problems. All right. They had a system of government set up after the U.S., okay? They had a president, they had a Congress and so forth, but they had a lot of problems. And what were some of the problems? Well, debt was a big problem, right? From the war, debt from the war, it's a lot of problems. Recognition was a problem. They needed other countries to recognize that they were independent. They needed other countries. They needed to persuade other countries that Texas was actually a sovereign nation. Okay, that was a problem that they had. They had problems with Native Americans. Now, these problems were largely self-inflicted. Okay, those problems. Why? Because, in all of these talks, all right, about folks from U.S., Mexicans, Americans, so forth, the people who were living there before then, on the Native Americans, they just got left out, right? And that became a problem because the Texans were taking over their land, taking over their territory, and the Native Americans didn't like it, which makes sense, right? They didn't like it, so there were raids from Native Americans. There was conflict with Native Americans, okay, but that was it was a largely self-inflicted problem, okay. There were two different approaches, and if you get asked a question about the Republic of Texas, about another question you might get asked, another question might be these two different approaches and how they diverged, okay, to addressing these problems. And we can look at two different people. We can look at Sam Houston, right? Sam Houston. I just put Sam Houston as Houston. And we can look at Mirabeau B. Lamar, okay? All right, so Sam Houston was the first president, Lamar was the second president. And then Houston was the third president, and then Anson Jones was the fourth president. Jones was supported by Houston, okay? So the government went back and forth. Houston, Lamar, Houston, and then Jones, who was supported by Houston. So it was kind of like Houston, Lamar, Houston, Houston, in a way. 4 presidents in this short period of time, 1836 to 1845. And they had 2 different approaches, vastly different approaches, really, to solving, to tackling these problems, okay? Some of these problems. Now, Houston, he wanted to make peace with the Native Americans. So we're going to write peace with, in my shorthand, Native Americans, okay? NA, Native Americans. Peace with Native Americans. He supported annexation. He supported annexation. There were actually a lot of people in Texas who supported annexation. A petition was sent by the government, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but a petition was sent by the government, by the Texan government, to Washington. They petitioned to become a state in 1836, in fact. They had just 1836, 1837, right around there. But here in the beginning of the Republic, a lot of people in Texas, they wanted to become a state. They wanted to become part of the U.S., okay? So Houston supported that effort, those efforts at annexation. Right? He wanted to reduce the size of the army, reduce military. Reduce the military. That's his military. Reduce the military. It's in your notes too. It's on the handout. Okay. Reduce the military. And he was thrifty. Thrifty. He did not spend a lot of money. He did not want to spend a lot of money. Okay. Now Lamar had different approaches to these problems. Lamar wanted to push Native Americans out of Texas. Push out Native Americans. Of course, that's a lot of people, a bunch of different tribes that he, had lived there a lot longer than Lamar had, but he wanted to push them out anyway. Okay. He wanted Texas to remain independent. Supported independence. To remain independent. That's what Lamar wanted, right? Houston wanted annexation. Lamar wanted independence, to remain independent, that is. He encouraged war, in fact. Here. War with Mexico. Encouraged war with Mexico. If I can write there. All right, good. That looks a little better. Right, Lamar he encouraged the war with Mexico. Why? Well, it had to do with Texas expansion to the west, okay? So this was still Mexican territory over here, okay? If I can see this. This was still Mexican territory, right? And Lamar was in favor of expanding westward. And the only way that was going to happen was by war, so with Mexico. And he spent money. He spent a lot of money on military endeavors, okay, in his short time in office. So those were the two approaches, okay. And if you see a question, the similarity might just be that they were both presidents, right? I mean, he was the first president. Lamar was Houston's vice president, and then he became president, all right? But the positions on these problems over here, the positions were quite different, all right? And these are the big picture things. This is again what's in the TEACs, and it's probably what you're going to get asked on a question, if one comes up, okay, about the Republic of Texas. In the next video, we're going to look at 2 issues. We're going to look at annexation of Texas by the U.S., and we're going to look at war with Mexico, at the Mexican War.